Glory to Jesus Christ. Glory to Jesus Christ. Glory to Jesus Christ. Today, the gospel reading is taken from St. Luke chapter 1, and it is about the birth of John the Baptist. Last week, we talked about the importance of environments, of engaging our children, even from the time of the womb. And when we talked about Mary visiting Elizabeth. And today we hear about the birth of John the Baptist. And I think when we think of John the Baptist, we know that he was maybe a strange man. He wasn't like your normal person in the sense of he had a strange way of living. He was very much a prophetic voice, preparing the way for Christ. And if there were things that we would know about him, there may be some certain qualities that we think about with John the Baptist. Here in today's gospel, we find out that there is time to name the child. The child was born, and usually it's the father's name. Many of us have that tradition. We have a name in us, or we were named after a father or grandfather in our life. And so the same thing happened here. They were expecting that his name should be Zacharias, because his father's name is Zacharias. But it's not so. And remember, Zacharias couldn't speak. He was muted by Gabriel when he showed disbelief when Gabriel appeared to him about him having a son. And then so he writes on a tablet, and he says his name is John. And the people are so surprised and amazed, they're marveling, and they are even saying, what kind of child will this be? And so, when I think of John the Baptist, and I think the scriptures show us about John the Baptist, there may be two qualities that we can think of. One is that he is a very simple man, not attached to this world. You see that when it describes him in the scriptures, it says, he was clothed in camel's hair with a leather belt around his waist. His food was locusts and wild honey. It's a very simple food, very, very modest attire. The image is coming across is a simple person who's not attached. Why is this important? Because as he is coming and preparing the way, he can't be bought with riches. He can't be enticed with things of this world. Because he's speaking very hard messages. And if you listen to what John the Baptist says, in Luke chapter 3, he talks about this. The people are seeing him. They realize he's someone sent by God. And they're starting to ask him, what shall we do then? What do we do to prepare for the kingdom? And he answers and says, he who has 2 tunics, let him give to one who has none. Or in today's word, you could say, he who has 2 shirts, let him give a shirt to one who has none. He who has food, let him do likewise. The tax collectors come to him, and he says, teacher, what shall we do? And he says, collect no more than what is appointed. The soldiers come and say, what should we do? And he says, don't intimidate anyone or accuse anyone falsely. Be content with your wages. He could only speak this with this much authority because he himself has this simplicity. He's not corrupted by the vanity of this world. Second thing that he has is he's very humble. And how do we know this? We know this because as he is preaching, as he is preparing the way, he's baptizing people. We call him John the Baptist. He's baptizing people in preparation for Christ. What does he do? The people come to him, and it says here in the scriptures, now as the people were in expectation, and all reasoned in their hearts about John, whether he was the Christ or not. Whether he was the Christ or not. In other words, people were looking at John the Baptist and saying, you must be the one that the prophets are writing about. You must be the one that we've been waiting for. Christ is a title, which means Messiah. And he's saying, you must be the one. You must be the person. And he could have at that moment taken that glory. And he could have at that moment said, yeah, maybe it is me. Maybe I'm the one. Maybe I'm the person that everyone has been waiting for all along. But he says, I indeed baptize you with water, but one mightier than I is coming, whose sandal strap I'm not worthy to loose. He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire. He is able to understand and give glory to the Lord, even when the people are coming to him and trying to give him glory. His simplicity, his humility. And because of this, he's able to speak truth to power. If you remember, he doesn't get to live very long. You don't hear about John the Baptist that he lived a nice old age. That's not the case for him. Actually, pretty early on, he gets challenged because he calls out a wrong relationship that's happening with Herod and with the daughter of Herodias. And he's understanding that there's a problem here. And they were very upset about this. And so they, of course, behead him. But even King Herod said, it said of him, he feared John, knowing that he was a just and holy man, and he protected him. So my question for us to meditate on is, how did John achieve this humility and this simplicity and this detachment? And it all comes from the last verse of the of the gospel reading for today. So the child grew and became strong in spirit and was in the deserts till the day of his manifestation to Israel. I think a lot of times we look at John the Baptist and we see the final product. We see this person who's able to preach and able to speak the truth to power and able to be detached from this world. But this verse is very important, that he grew and became strong in spirit and was in the deserts till his manifestation to Israel. Like I said, last week we talked about environments and we talked about engaging our children in the faith as they're growing up. But I think we also should understand, and I think we think of our home as very much like a place of nurturing, a safe place. And it is. A place of love. It is. But it also should be a training ground. Our home should also be a desert in a sense. And what do I mean by that? Our home should be a place, our family should be a place where we are developing and strengthening and becoming strong in the spirit. Where we're learning things like patience, giving attention and listening. Where we're learning things like sacrificing. Where we're learning things like being humble, asking forgiveness. Where we're learning things like self-control. That all can happen in the house while we're growing up, or even as adults. In our homes, we can be practicing these things. Fighting the demons. Because when you think about going to the desert, and when we think about the John the Baptist who inspired the desert fathers, what was their whole point? To really fight and face the demons that were attacking them. That was the whole point of it. Because in the world, it's so easy to be enticed. But when you really want to face the demons, because they're already able to detach from the world, but they go to the desert to really fight, to be with themselves and to really fight the demons that are there. And that's what the desert fathers did. And that's what we're called to do. Because the things that we struggle with as adults don't just come all of a sudden. They're there even in our childhood. Our anger, our lust, our pride, our laziness, our greed. These are all things that don't just show up at 25 or 30. They're cultivated and we have to constantly be fighting against it. And our upbringing should be, and our home should be, a place where we're constantly developing that and getting strong. Because what you're noticing now is when we do not do that, and when people turn to become in their 20s, they're not ready. There was a monk, his name is Saint Paisios. He was a monk who passed away in the early 90s. He was on Mount Athos, which is a famous mountain full of monasteries in Greece. And a lot of people would come to him to get counsel and get advice. They would travel to him with their different situations. And one thing he writes about, and I was reading this week, he was saying, I see so many insipid and disinterested young people today. All they do is judge everything, and they find all things boring. But they do not know that the heart never tires, nor does it get old. It is young in spirit. They come to the monastery thinking that life will be easier than working a job and having a family. But when they have to wake up in the middle of the night and have to do their different obediences in the monastery, they find it boring and they return to the world. They return back to the world and they say, how will I make a living in this society? And what kind of person will I be stuck with if I get married? These are their questions. And so they're not able to be ready for this life, for adulthood, for the struggles that come. And that's why I think you notice the marriage dates are getting pushed more and more and more, and older and older and older, and still we're not ready. And I think that's something we need to start addressing even in our teenage years, even in our homes. And even as adults, we show the struggles of marriage and the opportunities of forgiveness and humility. And these are things that we have to foster in the home. How do you foster humility? And the church fathers are clear about that. How do you foster? Do you just decide, I'm going to be humble? No, it doesn't happen like that. Nobody thinks, I want to be a proud person. That's not how a person thinks. How do you become humble? And the church fathers are clear. Prostrations, bowing down. Bow before the Lord every day. Do your prostrations. Whatever you can do, do it. It's very clear because it's very humbling to do that. More than words, to bow before the Lord, to put your face to the ground and submit before God. This will cultivate humility. How do you cultivate simplicity? Observe the fast. Deny yourself. Willingly deny yourself something. We're in this nativity fast, a time where everybody in Christmas is thinking about what they're going to get. And it's a time for us to think, what can I give up? How can I develop detachment and attach to Christ and His words? And the saints show us this very well. You may think John the Baptist is just one person, one example, but the saints show us this. Today is December 6th, a feast day of one of my favorite saints, Saint Nicholas. As a time, and he's a person in our society. His life has been forgotten, and Santa Claus has now taken the place. But Saint Nicholas is a beautiful, beautiful saint of the church. But pay attention to his desert. It says about him that when he grew up, he was studying the scriptures. He was in church all the time. He prayed and read spiritual books all the time. He was unceasing in prayer. This is his childhood. He grows up to become a priest and a bishop. But here's the thing. His parents were very wealthy. When they died, he inherited a great sum of money. But immediately he gives it away to the poor. How is he able to do that? Because in his time of the desert, meaning his childhood of reading the scriptures and growing in the faith and being in prayer, he was able to detach from that. So even when he got this money, he knew what to do with it. And that's where you hear that he looked for the poor. That he found poor people and he would give. But not only that, he didn't give in a way that was like, hey, look at me, Nicholas, or Bishop Nicholas. Look at all the charity that I'm doing. He didn't do that. He gave it in a very unique way. He would give it very secretly. And so what would happen is the poor people would put their shoes outside, and Bishop Nicholas would come and put gold coins in the shoes of the poor. And there's a story of a person who his kids were going to be sold into slavery, into prostitution, because they weren't able to make any other living and be married. And so in the middle of the night, it says gold, a sack of money was thrown into the window. And later they find that this is Nicholas. That's where you see today, you kind of see it. Santa Claus has that mystery around him. He comes in the night. He leaves the presents. You put the stockings. Remember, I told you about the shoes. You put stockings up. That's all coming from St. Nicholas. From what he did and how he did things. And presents would come in the stockings. It's the same thing. But you should know that that's coming from a saint of the church, St. Nicholas, who did these things. How was he able to do that? His humility. He didn't care about his name being attached to it. He didn't care, and he was able to detach and give it in the first place. His humility, his simplicity allowed him to do that, just like John the Baptist. And so our meditation for this week is, what desert am I willing to put myself in? And the fast and the prostrations and the life of the church and in my family life allows me to do this. To practice these and cultivate these virtues that I need of humility and simplicity and love. It's not just going to happen when we grow up. We have to cultivate that even as adults, we have to cultivate it. I see many adults who are still so attached, who are still full of pride and not able to practice and experience humility. And that's because it's a long journey. It's not an overnight journey. It's a time in the desert that we have to constantly go back to the desert. And the fasting periods are the times for us to do that. We also can have that John the Baptist experience and grow in spirit. May all glory be to the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, now and always, and forever and ever.